Hey there, tonight we will drift back into a simpler time, into the daily world of a medieval peasant. You won't hear tales of battles or kings, well, only in passing. Instead, we will walk through their homes, kitchens, fields, and bedrooms. We'll imagine the feel of wool on skin, the scent of porridge, the hush of dusk settling over thatched roofs. If you like this sort of slow history, perhaps press like or subscribe, only if you genuinely enjoy it. Now, dim the lights, settle in, and let's step softly into that distant world together. We begin in the early morning light. Let us begin with the morning. The peasant's day began, not with an alarm clock, but with the first grey light of dawn filtering through the thatch above. There were no curtains, no glass windows, only wooden shutters, if one was fortunate, and a soft breeze that drifted in, carrying the scent of damp earth and ash from the hearth. Imagine waking to the sound of animals stirring, perhaps the low bleat of a goat, the distant crow of a rooster, or the soft shifting of straw beneath your body. Most peasants slept on simple pallet sacks filled with hay or heather laid out on wooden frames, or directly on the packed earthen floor. The bedding might be shared, not just with one's spouse or children, but with siblings or elders. Sleeping was a communal, practical affair. The room would still be dark, except for a faint glow from the coals left smoldering overnight. Clothing was not changed daily, or even weekly. The woolen tunic you wore yesterday was likely the same one you'd pull on now, its texture rough against your skin. It smelled familiar and faintly sour with use. A woman might adjust her linen coiffure, small head covering tied beneath the chin, while a man pulled on his woolen hose, secured with braided garters at the knee. Children would begin to stir, rubbing their eyes, reaching for a crust of bread left near the hearth. There was little time for lingering. The day ahead was filled with tasks urgent in their simplicity, repetitive and seasonal. Outside, the village was slowly waking. The narrow, muddy lanes between cottages grew louder with life. The slap of bare feet, the grumble of oxen being yoked, the wooden clunk of a pail against a well's stone lip. Breakfast, if it could be called, that was a modest affair. Often just a piece of coarse rye bread, perhaps dipped in watered ale or milk if available. Meat was rare. Butter, sometimes. More often, the bread was dark and heavy, made from a mix of grains, including barley and oats, and sometimes stretched with ground peas or beans. As the sun rose higher, the fieldwork began. Most peasants were bound to the land, working strips of common field in the open field system. A man might spend hours behind a wooden plow, guiding a sluggish ox, while his wife sowed seeds by hand. Children would chase birds from the crops, or gather firewood from the edges of the forest, where the trees grew tall and the underbrush clung with dew. Clothing had to serve them well. The tunics were long and simple, stitched from homespun wool. The colors were muted. Dyes were expensive, so most garments remained in shades of undyed brown, gray, or faded green. Linen, when available, was used for underclothing, as it was smoother against the skin and easier to wash. But washing itself was infrequent, if done in the river, using lye soap made from wood, ash, and animal fat. By midday, work paused briefly. A shared potager, thick vegetable stew, made from whatever was in season, bubbled over the hearth in a heavy iron pot. It might include onions, leeks, cabbage, sometimes beans or lentils. The stew was eaten with a wooden spoon, often shared from the same bowl. The bread was dipped into it, soaking up the flavors, which changed only slightly from day to day. After this brief meal, the work resumed. The rhythm of their lives was governed by necessity, by the sun, by the soil, and by the manna. You see, most peasants owed labor to a lord. 3 days a week, perhaps more, would be spent working not on their own land, but on the domain their lord's fields. It was a system of obligation and of dependence, and so they worked. Hoes struck soil, baskets were filled, grain was threshed beneath heavy flails. The tools were simple wood and iron, worn smooth by hands hardened from years of toil. As evening fell, the sky turned a soft blue-gray. The light faded slowly, and with it, the world grew quiet. Back in the cottage, the hearth was stirred back to life. A bit of cheese, if there was any, might be shared. Ale brewed weak and consumed more safely than water was sipped slowly, as the fire cast long shadows on the walls. There was no privacy in a peasant's home. One room, perhaps two. Children curled beside parents. A chicken might wander across the floor. The smoke from the hearth drifted upward, escaping through a hole in the roof, or simply filling the air until it found its own way out. And then, at last, sleep returned. Simple, unadorned, dreamless. The world outside continued. Owls called softly. The wind brushed the fields, and somewhere, a dog barked once before silence took hold again. This was the rhythm of their lives, steady, enduring, unseen. And with that rhythm in mind, let us gently shift now from the broad strokes of daily routine to the life of one peasant in particular. Let us now settle into the long and steady rhythm of a single life, a life like many others, yet touched with its own quiet purpose and change. His name was Ælfric. He was born in the year 1317 in a small village not far from the edge of the New Forest in southern England. It was a place marked not on maps, but only in memory, in the footprints of oxen, the wear of feet on packed soil, and the grooves left by carts long since rotted away. Ælfric's parents, like their parents before them, were villains and free tenants, bound to the land of a local lord. Their life was not marked by ownership, but by obligation, and yet it was still theirs to live. Imagine Ælfric as a boy, curious, small for his age, often with dirt beneath his fingernails and a perpetual scab on one knee. His earliest memories were of the warmth of the hearth, and of helping his mother gather kindling near the hedgerow. His father, a quiet man with rough hands, would often kneel beside him at night, reciting the Paternoster in a voice that was slow and firm. Faith was woven into daily life, not with ceremony, but with gentle familiarity. Crossing oneself before meals, murmuring prayers while planting, listening to the Latin words at church, not fully understood, but fully believed. Ælfric's youth passed steadily, shaped by the seasons. He learned to sow barley by hand, to twist flax into thread, and to mend a roof with bundles of straw. By the age of 10, he could drive a plough, and by 12, he could shear a sheep, albeit slowly. His first true sorrow came during a bitter winter, when a fever passed through the village. 2 of his younger siblings did not survive. They were buried near the edge of the churchyard, beside others whose names were soon forgotten. But Ælfric remembered. He always would. By 16, he was full-grown, slim, sinewy, with a quiet strength. He wore a simple woolen tunic, belted at the waist with braided cord, and carried a wooden staff when walking to the fields. He was not ambitious. Ambition, for a peasant, was a dangerous and unfamiliar thing. But he was observant. He noticed which fields held water longer, which trees bore the most fruit, and which neighbors could be trusted. He married a girl named Edith from a nearby hamlet. Their wedding was smaller, gathering in the churchyard after Sunday Mass. The priest gave a brief blessing. There was no feast, only a shared pot of stew and a small jug of ale passed between them. And still, it was enough. Their home was small, with low ceilings and smoke-darkened beams. In winter, they hung cloth across the doorway to keep out the drafts. They raised 2 children, both girls, and kept a few chickens in a pen beside the path. Edith spun wool on a spindle made of bone, and sold extra thread at the village fair. In time, Ælfric became a Rehavan-elected village official, chosen by the manor's peasants to represent them to the Lord Steward. It was not a title of power, but of burden. He kept records of ploughing duties, ensured the manor's cattle were tended, and settled disputes when they arose. It brought him no wealth, only a sense of order. One autumn, a stranger arrived. He was a thin, dust-covered man with a wide-brimmed hat, traveling between towns, claiming knowledge of the law. He spoke of markets, of towns filled with color and noise, of people buying and selling freely. Ælfric listened, but remained unmoved. What use was freedom, he thought, if it brought only restlessness? His fields needed tending, his roof needed patching, his children needed shoes. And then came the great shadow. The year was 1349. Word had already reached them by then, whispers of a pestilence moving across the land. It had crossed the sea, they said. It came with merchants, with rats, with the breath of strangers. At first, the village continued, as it always had. But soon, too soon, the signs appeared. Neighbors fell ill, then vanished behind closed doors, then were buried quietly, with no ringing of bells. Ælfric survived. So did Edith and their daughters. They were lucky. Many were not. When it passed, everything had changed. Fields lay fallow. Cottages stood empty. Even the manor seemed uncertain, its steward gone. Its demands softened. For the first time, Ælfric noticed something else in the air. Space. Freedom. Of a kind. There was more land than people to work it. Wages rose, if only slightly. Labor became something with value, not merely obligation. In those years, Elfric's family gained a modest measure of comfort. They ate a little better. The bread became finer. Their daughters learned to read a little, taught by a traveling monk who stayed in the village one summer. When Elfric died, quietly, at the age of 61, it was during a peaceful autumn. He had just finished stacking bundles of rye near the granary, and he paused to watch the sun setting behind the trees. No one recorded his name. No stone marked his grave. And yet, in the long story of human life, his was no less real than that of kings. His tunic still hung on a peg. His staff still leaned near the door. And in the early evening stillness, the fields he once worked turned golden once more. Elfric's life was typical, and that is what makes it remarkable. It offers a glimpse into the quiet dignity, the hardship, and the subtle joys of peasant life across the Middle Ages. Now, having walked alongside one man's path, let us turn next to the traces left behind by others, fragments buried in soil, symbols carved in stone, and mysteries that still speak, faintly, from across the centuries. Imagine standing in a field today. The air is still. The grass brushes softly against your ankles. Beneath your feet, the earth is undisturbed, or so it seems, but just below the surface lie the fragments of forgotten lives, a shard of coarse pottery, the corner of a hearthstone, the rusted edge of an iron buckle, small, humble things, but together they whisper a story. Archaeologists call these remnants the material culture of the medieval peasant, and while no chronicles were written by their hands, their world lingers quietly in soil, wood, and bone. Let us take a gentle walk now, through a village not found on modern maps, but patiently uncovered by careful hands and quiet minds. In the English countryside, near the edge of old Roman roads, lie the lost medieval villages. Places like Wareham Percy, Gainsthorpe, or Seacourt once full of life, now only known by soft depressions in grassy hills, or faint outlines seen from the sky after summer droughts. Wareham Percy is perhaps the best studied here. Foundations of peasant homes have been carefully exposed. Thin stone walls, narrow rooms, hearths blackened by centuries of smoke. The cottages were modest, many, no larger than a modern bedroom. Some had small annexes for animals. Others included bread ovens, their domes of clay cracked but still recognizable. We find the remains of meals here too. Animal bones, mostly from pigs and chickens, crushed oyster shells, sometimes brought from the coast, and countless ceramic shards from jugs, cooking pots, and cups. The pottery is thick and heavy, often unglazed, made not for beauty, but for endurance. Yet even in their practicality, there is something pleasing. The shape of a jug, curved just so for the hand, a thumbprint pressed into the clay before firing. The quiet presence of the maker. These artifacts tell us that peasant life, while hard, was not without creativity. People decorated what they could, scratching simple lines into the handles of pitchers, or shaping clay into spindle whorls with swirling patterns. And there are stranger finds, too. Beneath the threshold of one cottage, archaeologists uncovered a chicken's skull, buried deliberately, and in another, the remains of a broken shoe, folded carefully and placed beneath the floorboards. Why? It's not entirely clear, but many believe these were folk protections, part of a quiet tradition of superstitions and small, private rituals, a way to guard against misfortune, illness, or the wandering spirits that were believed to drift through village lanes after dark. You see, the peasant's world was not merely physical, it was layered with meanings, with signs, omens, and invisible forces. A hare seen before planting might signal a poor harvest. A cracked mirror, or more commonly, a broken basin, was best left untouched. Bread dropped on the floor was picked up, kissed, and blessed. These customs, passed down by word and habit, were rarely written, and yet they endured. Even the layout of villages shows a quiet consistency. Most followed a simple plan, a central green or church, narrow house plots along a main lane, and long narrow fields radiating outward. This pattern repeated, again and again, across the medieval landscape. It wasn't random, it was memory, solidified in wood, stone, and habit. Inside the homes, a few rare finds hint at daily life. A child's wooden toy horse, carved with care and worn smooth by play. A needle, bent slightly at the tip, still threaded when it was lost. A comb made of bone, its teeth broken, but its curves still fitting neatly in the palm. Each object tells a story not of kings and conquests, but of hands at work, of ordinary people living in ordinary time. And then there are the traces of sleep. We rarely think of sleep as something that leaves a mark in the soil, but it does. Some cottages had built-in platforms, slightly raised areas packed with straw and covered in rush mats. In others, simple wood frames suggest the shape of early beds, and occasionally pins and fragments of linen survive, hinting at blankets, shifts, and night clothes, now long gone. There is no diary to tell us what they dreamt of, but their resting places were real, and the rhythm of night followed the seasons. In winter, they may have slept longer, often in 2 shifts, with a period of wakefulness in between. Some might rise briefly to stoke the hearth, or whisper prayers. Others sat quietly, in the darkness, listening to the wind. One of the most poignant archaeological discoveries is not an object, but a void. Abandoned villages, dozens, perhaps hundreds, across Europe. Places once full of smoke, laughter, argument, and labor, now silent. Some were left behind after the plague. Others disappeared after harvests failed, or when landowners enclosed fields for sheep grazing. Their departure was often gradual. A cottage left empty after its occupant died. A thatched roof collapsing slowly under rain. The earth reclaiming its own. Centuries later, only the faintest traces remain. But still, a tile here, a hearthstone there, and the soft suggestion that someone once slept beneath the stars, not as a traveler, but at home. There is comfort in this quiet persistence, that even lives forgotten by history's grand narrative. Leave gentle marks, a dent in the soil, a curve of pottery, a space that once held warmth, and perhaps, if you walked there now, just before sunset, you might feel it, too. The rhythm of their lives, still faintly echoing beneath your feet. As we leave the soil and symbols behind, let us turn now to those who lived in a different rhythm altogether, to the manor house, to the steward, to the clergy and nobility who looked down sometimes kindly, sometimes cruelly upon the lives of those we've just walked among. Imagine now a short walk away from the humble cottages and muddy lanes of the village, a place where the rhythm of life beats differently, more measured and expansive. The manor house, from the outside, it might look sturdy but modest, timber-framed and thatched like the peasant homes nearby. Yet inside, the difference was clear. Stone floors, tapestries woven with colors rich and deep, a great hall with long wooden tables, heavy benches, and the scent of burning pine logs drifting in the air. Here lived the lord of the manor, the steward, and sometimes a small retinue of servants and officials. While peasants worked the fields from dawn to dusk, the manor's halls followed a different schedule, marked by meals, court sessions, and quiet management. In the early morning, the lord's household awoke to soft servants' footsteps on flagstone floors. Chambers were warmed by braziers and curtains drawn against the chill. Silks and fine linens replaced rough wool and homespun. The lord's clothing was layered, often brightly dyed, deep reds, blues, and greens made from costly plants or insects. Velvet and fur-trimmed collars and cuffs, soft against the skin. A servant helped with dressing a ritual in itself, tying laces and adjusting belts, smoothing fabric with practiced hands. Breakfast was more elaborate, too. Fresh bread, cheese, and sometimes cold meats or fish. Ale was richer, sometimes spiced, and wine could be poured for those who could afford it. But the day was still busy. The lord and steward oversaw the collection of rents, the organization of labor, and the resolution of disputes. Meetings took place in the great hall, where the lord sat upon a carved wooden chair, simple, but elevated above others. Messages from the manor's bailiff might be read aloud. A dispute over a boundary stone settled with quiet words. A peasant summoned to account for a late payment. Meanwhile, the manor's kitchen bustled with activity. Large cauldrons simmered over open fires, filling the air with the aroma of herbs, thyme, rosemary, and parsley. Roasts might be prepared on spits turned by servants, or fish smoked gently in small smokehouses nearby. Meals were eaten in courses: soup, bread, meat, cheese, and fruit, often followed by sweetened puddings made with honey or dried berries. Tables were laid with wooden trenchers, thick slices of bread, serving as plates and pewter cups, while the peasants shared from one bowl. The lord's household enjoyed their own separate vessels, polished and kept for years. Religious life was central to both peasants and lords, but practiced differently. The manor often had a private chapel, where the lord and family could attend mass in relative quiet and comfort. Priests dressed in fine robes, their voices soft and measured as they read Latin prayers. In contrast, peasants gathered in the village church, a humble stone building, cold in winter and filled with echoes. The prayers were the same, but the experience worlds apart. The clergy themselves occupied a space between worlds. Monks and nuns lived in cloisters, devoted to prayer and study. Their days marked by the ringing of bells and the recitation of the divine office at fixed hours. Though often from humble origins themselves, they enjoyed learning books and a stability unknown to most peasants. Even leisure differed. The lord might enjoy falconry and elegant sport involving the trained flight of birds of prey, or listen to minstrels singing soft ballads beside the fire. Peasants, in their brief moments of rest, gathered around the village green. They danced simply, their songs often about the changing seasons, love, or the toil of the fields. Yet despite these differences, the lives of peasants and lords were intertwined. The manor depended on the labor of peasants. Peasants looked to the manor for protection, justice, and sustenance. The boundaries were clear, but permeable. A peasant might aspire to lease more land. A lord might visit the village to inspect crops, or collect tithes. In some moments, the distance softened when festival bells rang, or when harvests were good. As evening fell over the manor, the household quieted. The lord retired to chambers lined with tapestries, where the smell of lavender and beeswax lingered. A servant drew thick curtains against the night. Outside, the village grew silent. The rhythm of life slowed once more. And so, having touched on the daily lives of peasants, walked alongside Elfric, uncovered the silent stories buried in the earth, and glimpsed the contrasting world of manor and elite, we begin to see the full picture, the weaving of many simple lives, joined by labor, faith, and hope. As dusk deepens and the village quiets, imagine yourself once more walking slowly down a soft, earthen lane. The sun has slipped below the horizon, painting the sky with muted shades of lavender and rose. The air is cool, still thick with the scent of damp straw and the faint whisper of wood smoke. In a small cottage, Elfric's household prepares for rest. The hearth, now reduced to glowing embers, sends gentle warmth curling through the room. A soft glow from a tallow candle flickers in the corner, its light steady but faint. The children have been tucked beneath bundles of coarse wool, wrapped carefully to keep the chill at bay. Edith sits quietly by the fire, spinning thread in the fading light, her fingers steady and slow. Imagine the textures around you, the rough grain of the rush mat beneath your feet, the thick wool blanket, slightly coarse but comforting, layered carefully over you, the faint scratch of linen against skin, worn smooth by repeated washing. Sounds drift softly through the air, the low murmur of wind weaving through the trees, the distant call of an owl, echoing from the forest edge, a faint crackle from the dying fire, gentle and rhythmic. You might hear the soft creak of wooden beams settling as the house breathes in the night. Sleep in the medieval village was not like the sleep of modern convenience. There were no feather mattresses or warm radiators, no soft pillows or thick curtains, but rest was precious nonetheless. Families often shared a single room, bodies close for warmth and comfort. Beds were simple straw mattresses laid upon wooden frames or raised platforms. Sheets and blankets were handmade, their textures uneven but familiar. In colder months, people might sleep in shifts, an early period of sleep, followed by a quiet waking sometimes used for prayer, reflection, or tending the hearth for a second rest until dawn. This segmented sleep was natural to many pre-industrial societies and may have lent a gentle rhythm to the night. The senses of a peasant, as sleep approached, were attuned to subtle signs. The shift in air temperature as evening deepened, the soft rustle of animals settling in their stalls nearby, the faint smell of earth, mingled with smoke and herbs hung above the doorway, lavender, rosemary, or dried mint to comfort, and perhaps to guard against illness. Candles were used sparingly, their faint glow enough to guide, but not to disturb the quiet dark. Imagine yourself lying down now, feeling the weight of the day gradually lifting, the softness of straw beneath you, the warmth of wool pulled around your shoulders, the steady pulse of your own breath mingling with the quiet sounds of the night. Outside, the village sleeps too. No rush, no hurry, only the slow turning of hours marked by the stars. And so, In this peaceful stillness, the peasants of long ago found their rest. Simple, necessary, a pause in the cycle of life that, despite its many hardships, offered moments of calm and renewal. Their sleep was the same sleep that humans have shared across centuries and continents. A sleep as natural and gentle as the falling dusk. As your own eyes grow heavier and your breathing slows, imagine the quiet village, the glowing hearth, and the soft rustle of straw beneath you. You are part of a long and unbroken thread of rest and repose. And now, with the rhythm of their lives echoing softly around you, it is time to let go, to drift gently into sleep. Imagine yourself stepping softly into a small medieval kitchen, nestled deep within the heart of a peasant's humble home. The walls are thick with rough plaster, darkened by smoke and the steady warmth of countless fires kindled over the years. The floor is hard-packed earth, cool and uneven beneath your feet, scattered with dry straw that cushions your steps. The air is thick with gentle scents, the smoky tang of burning wood mingling with the faint sweetness of roasting grains, and the subtle earthiness of dried herbs hung in bundles from the low ceiling. Outside, the sounds of the village fade into the quiet crackle of the hearth fire. You pause, taking in the soft golden glow of the embers, the flickering shadows that dance lazily along the stone and timber walls. A copper pot hangs low over the fire, gently simmering, its contents releasing a quiet whisper of warmth and comfort into the room. Food in the life of a medieval peasant was more than mere sustenance. It was a quiet anchor in the steady rhythm of their days, a familiar pattern that offered both physical and emotional nourishment. Meals marked the passage of time, divided the day into manageable portions, and brought the family together in the soft warmth of their simple home. Though their fare may seem modest to us, it was shaped by the land, the seasons, and the unyielding cycle of sowing and harvest. The peasant's daily table was often humble-built from roughly hewn wood, low and sturdy, worn smooth by generations of hands. On this surface rested coarse bread, dense and dark, baked from rye or barley, sometimes mixed with bits of oats or even peas for texture. Bread was life, the very foundation of the peasant's diet. It was used as a utensil, a plate, and a vessel all at once, trencher bread thick enough to hold stews and soups, yet soft enough to be torn by hand. Imagine tearing off a piece, feeling the rough crust giving way to the dense, slightly damp crumb within. The aroma is faint but wholesome earthy, with the faintest hint of smoke from the communal oven's fire. The peasant's bread was rarely white or fluffy like the bread of the wealthy. It was dark, sometimes sour, made from the coarser grains that grew well in the cooler soils of northern Europe. In some places, barley and rye took precedence. In others, oats, or even buckwheat, formed the base. Wheat was a luxury reserved for the lords or special occasions. Beside the bread, bowls of thick porridge were commonly made from oats or barley. Slowly boiled over the hearth fire, stirred carefully with wooden spoons. The porridge was thick and hearty, sometimes sweetened with a touch of honey or dried fruits, but more often simply seasoned with a pinch of salt or herbs for flavor. Imagine the slow, steady stirring, the comforting warmth radiating from the pot, and the gentle clink of wooden spoons as family members take turns ladling the meal into their bowls. Vegetables were seasonal and humble. Cabbage, leeks, onions, beans, peas, and wild greens gathered from hedgerows and fields. In the summer, small root vegetables like carrots and parsnips might appear, their earth still clinging faintly to their skins. Fresh herbs, parsley, thyme, and sage were carefully tended in small garden patches near the home. They infused the simple dishes with gentle fragrances and subtle layers of flavor. Meat was a rarity, reserved mostly for special occasions, feast days, or the bounty of a successful hunt. Peasants raised small animals, chickens, rabbits, and sometimes pigs, kept in small pens close to the home. A chicken might be slaughtered and shared among the family when the time was right, but this was done sparingly. Imagine the ritual surrounding these moments, the careful preparation, the somber gratitude for the life given, and the communal sharing of the meat in small, cherished portions. Preservation of food was an art in itself. Meat and fish were salted or smoked, hung in cool, dry places to keep through the lean months. Root vegetables were stored in layers of sand or straw in cool cellars or pits dug near the home. Dried grains and legumes were kept in woven baskets or clay jars sealed with wax. All these methods ensured survival through long winters, when the fields lay fallow and fresh produce was scarce. One of the quiet delights of the peasant's table was the humble stew, a bubbling pot over the hearth, filled with whatever was at hand: turnips, leeks, beans, onions, sometimes a scrap of salted pork or smoked fish. The stew simmered slowly for hours, the flavors melding in the heat, releasing gentle scents of earth and smoke. Imagine the soft clinking of the ladle as it dips into the thick, fragrant broth, the warmth radiating from the bowl as it is passed around. Seasonal celebrations brought more variety. During harvest festivals or religious holy days, peasant families might bake small cakes sweetened with honey or dried fruit. Berries gathered from the forest were turned into jams or dried for winter use. Occasionally, the village shared in larger feasts, where music, dance, and laughter filled the air. Simple joys interwoven with the steady work of the land. Bread and ale were staples. Ale was brewed in every household, a nourishing drink more reliable than often contaminated water sources. It was thick and low in alcohol, safe and sustaining. Imagine the sound of wooden mugs clinking softly in the evening, the warmth of ale settling gently in the belly after a long day. Despite the hardships, food was a source of comfort, a small pleasure amid toil and uncertainty. The act of cooking, kindling the fire, stirring the pot, kneading dough was a rhythm, a daily ritual that connected peasants to the earth and each other. Imagine now the kitchen at the close of day, the fire reduced to glowing coals, the pots washed and hung to dry in the fading light, a wooden table wiped clean and swept. The smells of cooking lingered gently, the faint aroma of herbs, the lingering warmth of bread. Outside, night falls softly, and the village settles into quiet. The steady rhythm of meals, work, and rest continues as constant and comforting as the turning seasons. As your breathing slows and your eyes grow heavier, let the quiet warmth of the medieval kitchen settle around you. Let the gentle cadence of daily life, the breaking of bread, the simmering stew, the shared cup of alrock, you toward peaceful rest. The rhythm of their lives continues softly, beneath the stars, beneath the earth. And now, in this moment, within you, imagine yourself stepping once again into the heart of the medieval village, where the gentle sounds of life rise and fall like a soft tide. The air is cool but carries the warm, familiar scent of smoke and earth, mingled with herbs drying from wooden rafters. You approach a small cottage. Its walls, a patchwork of wattle and daub, sturdy wooden beams holding the roof of straw or reeds. The door, simple and worn smooth by many hands, creaks softly as it opens. Inside, the room is small, a single space, serving many purposes: cooking, eating, working, and resting. A low ceiling, blackened by smoke from the open hearth, makes the room feel cozy and enclosed, a protective shell against the chill outside. The hearth is the heart of the home, a wide stone or clay fireplace where fires burn day and night. Imagine the warmth radiating softly from the glowing embers, the occasional crackle of wood as it settles, and the gentle flicker of flames casting dancing shadows on rough plaster walls. Around the hearth, simple furniture speaks of necessity and care. A sturdy wooden table, scratched and nicked from years of use, stands close by. Benches or stools, roughly hewn but solid, surround it. In the corner, a rough wooden chest holds cloth, tools, and precious small belongings. Shelves carved from timber-holed pots, wooden bowls, and woven baskets. The floor beneath your feet is packed earth, swept clean each morning but still carrying the faint scent of straw and soil. Occasionally, Russia's long dried reeds are strewn across the floor to soften footsteps and add a layer of insulation. Imagine the faint rustle of these rushes underfoot, their dry, crisp texture, a subtle contrast to the soft warmth of the fire. Domestic life moves at a gentle but purposeful pace. In the morning, sunlight filters through small, shuttered windows, pale and soft. The family stirs, their movements slow and unhurried as they rise from the straw mattresses layered with woolen blankets. Children's voices are low, a quiet chorus of yawns and soft laughter. The hearth fire is rekindled, the smoke rising in a lazy spiral through a small hole in the roof or a narrow chimney. Cooking begins, pots filled with porridge, herbs gathered from the garden added to simmering stews. The aroma is gentle but inviting, smoky wood, sweet herbs, and the earthy scent of grains. Clothing is hung near the fire to dry. Woolen cloaks and homespun tunics release the faint scent of lanolin, mingling with the soft musk of worn fabric. You might hear the quiet clack of wooden spindles turning thread, or the scratch of a needle weaving simple stitches by candlelight. The day is filled with the rhythms of labor, tending to animals, mending tools, collecting water from the well. Yet the home remains a place of refuge and connection. Families gather around the fire in the evening, sharing stories and small acts of kindness. Imagine the soft glow of candlelight flickering against the walls as night deepens. The crackle of the fire becomes a gentle soundtrack. Outside, the village grows still. The simple comforts of home, a place to rest, to repair, to prepare for the next day, are a quiet sanctuary. The cycle continues. Hearth and home, work and rest, bread and firelight. Each moment, simple and profound. Let this image linger as your own breathing slows, your muscles relax, and the gentle rhythm of medieval life carries you softly toward peaceful sleep. Imagine the soft light of a late spring afternoon, the village square gently coming to life with the slow bustle of familiar faces. The warm sun hangs low in the sky, casting long, lazy shadows over the earth-packed ground beneath your feet. The scent of fresh-cut hay mingles with the delicate fragrance of wildflowers growing at the edges of the fields. You stand quietly in the heart of the village, where a small crowd has gathered, friends, families, neighbors, drawn together by a shared rhythm of tradition and celebration. Medieval peasant life, though marked by steady work and enduring hardship, was also punctuated by moments of rest and joy. Festivals and social gatherings provided essential relief from the constant toil, a chance for connection, renewal, and quiet festivity. These events were woven into the fabric of the agricultural calendar, tied to the cycles of planting, growing, and harvesting. Picture a harvest festival in early autumn. The fields, golden and heavy with grain, have been gathered in. The scent of ripened wheat, sweet and dry, lingers in the warm air. Bundles of straw are stacked neatly nearby, ready for thatching or feeding animals in the coming months. Villagers come together to share food and drink, stories and music. A wooden platform is set in the center of the square, where simple instruments, flutes, drums, and fiddles begin to play slow, lilting melodies. The music is gentle, the rhythms unhurried. Children run barefoot across the soft earth, their laughter mingling with the murmur of conversations. Women in homespun dresses and men in tunics and breeches move slowly to the music, stepping carefully in dance circles. Hands are joined, fingers intertwined, the movement steady and measured, as if guided by the slow pulse of the earth itself. Long tables are set beneath large trees, draped with rough linen cloths. On them lie loaves of dark bread, bowls of stewed vegetables, pots of thick porridge, and jugs of ale and cider. The food is simple but hearty, nourishing those gathered with familiar flavors and textures. Imagine the sound of wooden spoons tapping against bowls, the soft clinking of mugs raised in quiet toasts. The aroma of cooking fires from nearby cottages drifts through the air, mingling with the earthy smell of soil and the faint perfume of herbs. There is a sacredness to these moments, a shared breathing space where the worries of the day pause and the bonds of community deepen. Older villagers tell stories, tales of the land, of ancestors long past, of seasons remembered. Their voices are calm, the cadence slow and deliberate, weaving a tapestry of history and belonging. The rhythm of the festival follows the natural world. Sunlight fades slowly, turning the sky a soft shade of pink and purple. Candles and lanterns are lit, their gentle glow flickering like fireflies among the shadows. As evening settles, small fires are kindled around the gathering. The warmth draws people closer, bodies huddled in the cool night air. The crackle of flames is a quiet lullaby. In the hush of night, the village sleeps together, connected by shared stories, shared work, and shared rest. These celebrations, though simple and subdued, remind all present of their place in the greater cycle of life. Imagine yourself here, embraced by the soft murmur of voices and the gentle warmth of firelight. Feel the slow dance of community and tradition weaving through your senses, grounding you in a timeless moment. As you relax into this scene, let the quiet joy of connection and the steady pulse of the seasons lull you gently onward. The rhythm of medieval life, with its balance of work and rest, hardship and celebration, carries on softly, and so can you. The stories of their festivals remind us that even in the humblest of places, the human spirit finds ways to celebrate, to connect, and to rest. A gentle reminder as your own eyelids grow heavy, the same rhythm that carried them through centuries now embraces you. Let your breathing slow as the festival fades into soft twilight. Let the gentle flicker of candles and stars carry you closer to sleep. Imagine the quiet songs, the soft laughter, the warm touch of a hand in yours. Rest here in the comfort of shared human tradition, in the slow turning of the seasons, in the soft glow of community and quiet celebration. When you are ready, simply say, "Continue," and I will prepare the next segment to guide you gently onward in this calming journey. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a village, where the thatched roofs of modest cottages gradually give way to larger, sturdier structures. The air here is tinged not only with the scents of earth and straw, but faintly with polished wood, beeswax, and the subtle fragrance of well-kept gardens. Before you rises the manor house, a simple fortress of stone and timber, solid and quiet, sheltered by groves of ancient trees. This place feels different from the village, its pace measured in another rhythm. While the peasants tend their fields and animals, the lord's household prepares to carry out duties and rituals in quieter, more contained spaces. The medieval manor was the center of local authority, the place where economic, judicial, and social power rested. But despite the differences in status and lifestyle, the lives of peasants and their lords were connected through a web of obligations, routines, and small, steady interactions. As you imagine the scene, picture a day in early spring. The sun is soft, casting pale light over the patchwork fields, stretching towards the horizon. From your place among the furrows, you look up and see a group of riders approaching the village road. Their clothes are finer, their horses well kept. The lord and his household are making their way to oversee the lands. The peasants pause their work, faces calm but watchful. There is a respectful distance between the two worlds, yet a subtle thread that binds them. The lord depends on the peasants' labor to keep the manor running. The peasants in turn owe service and rents, both in coin and in kind. The manor court convenes in a large hollow space built from sturdy oak beams, walls adorned with tapestries and simple banners. Inside, the lord and his steward conduct the affairs of justice and governance. Villagers may be called to answer disputes, settle debts, or hear proclamations. Imagine the quiet murmurs filling the hall, the soft rustling of woolen cloaks and linen sleeves as people settle into their places, the steady creak of wooden benches beneath shifting weight, the calm voice of the steward reading out the day's business, measured and deliberate. Though the manor's justice could be strict, it was also a space where the community's order was maintained. Small offenses were met with fines or tasks, rather than harsh punishments. The lord's role was often to balance authority with the practical needs of keeping the village productive and peaceful. Outside the hall, in the village square, the peasants carry on their daily routines. Women draw water from the well, their buckets dipping and rising with soft splashes. Children play quietly near the hearths of their homes. The rhythm of life continues, unhurried. Within the manor grounds, the lord's family enjoys more comforts. Rooms are furnished with wooden chests, cushions stuffed with feathers or wool, and tables polished from years of care. Windows are glazed with thin sheets of hornor. In grander homes, with small panes of glass, the scent of herbs and beeswax fills the air, mingling with the faint aroma of cooked meats and fresh bread. Yet, despite the differences, the lord's world is not one of extravagance but measured restraint. Luxuries are few, and life remains closely tied to the land and seasons. Even the Lord's Day follows a steady pace, prayers in the chapel, managing accounts, overseeing harvests. Back in the village, peasants prepare their offerings of grain, eggs, or labor. These payments are made not only as duty, but as part of a reciprocal system protection and access to land in exchange for service. Imagine the quiet negotiation behind these exchanges, the balancing of survival and obligation. Sometimes, on market days, peasants travel to nearby towns to sell surplus produce or crafts. The market is a lively but controlled space. Stalls of woven cloth, pots, salted fish, and fresh vegetables line the streets. Voices rise and fall in measured tones, bartering gently, never hurried. Imagine a peasant woman carefully selecting cloth to repair a garment, or a man trading a basket of eggs for salted pork. The exchanges are slow and deliberate, the sound soft but purposeful. The life of the medieval peasant was, in many ways, shaped by these connections to the manor and to broader networks. Their days moved in the rhythms of planting and harvest, of rent and service, of family and faith. There were moments of tension, certainly, when crops failed or demands increased, but there were also moments of quiet understanding and shared purpose. The Lord needed the peasants as much as the peasants depended on the Lord. Imagine now the close of day. The manor's great hall glows softly with candlelight. The fire crackles, casting flickering shadows. Outside, the village settles into quiet. Families gather at their hearths, the rhythm of work yielding to the rhythm of rest. In this meeting of worlds, the modest cottages and the sturdy manor life continues in its slow, steady course, a dance of duty, survival, and occasional grace. Feel the calm of this balance, the gentle tension between obligation and freedom, the steady pulse of life shared across boundaries of status and space. As your breathing deepens and your body relaxes, allow this peaceful contrast to lull your mind gently. The rhythms of medieval life, though different from our own, carry a familiar heartbeat. Let this heartbeat echo softly now, a pulse of earth and stone, of wood and woven cloth, of shared meals and whispered prayers, of fields tilled and fires tended. Let the quiet harmony between village and manor, peasant and lord, settle around you like a soft cloak. And as the night deepens, know that the same rhythms that carried them through centuries now cradle you, steady and calm.